I've been curious about the usefulness and functionality of metal dado planes like this Stanley No. 39 for a number of years, especially since in recent years it's become more and more difficult to find good wooden dado planes like this one here in good usable condition, and it's becoming harder for me to recommend them to my students because they're having harder and harder time finding them. So today what I want to do is clean up and test out this Stanley No. 39 3/4 inch dado plane.
I start by completely disassembling the plane. The depth stop can be tricky to remove. Start by removing the thumb screw. Raise the depth stop all the way up until the larger threads of the adjusting screw disengage from the main casting. Then, while holding the depth stop in the raised position, turn the adjusting screw in the opposite direction until the small reverse threads have been removed from the depth stop. Remove the two knickers, paying attention to which side of the plane they came from, because the knickers on some models are not interchangeable. Remove the blade clamping thumb screw, the blade, and finally the blade clamp itself. Brush off all the loose dirt and dust, and then clean all the parts with a mild degreaser. Surface rust can be removed from the bare iron and steel parts with a soft, and I stress soft, wire wheel. Don't wire wheel any of the japanned areas or you'll ruin the japanning. With the surface rust removed, clean out any threaded holes with cotton swabs or pipe cleaners and a little bit of penetrating oil. Address the knickers and main iron by first flattening and polishing the backs, then honing the bevels. Apply a light coat of oil to all the parts as you reassemble the plane. The process for reassembling the depth stop is the reverse of the disassembly process. Install the knickers on their proper side and adjust them to sit just below the sole of the plane. Install the blade and adjust it to align between the knickers and slightly shallower in depth. To use the plane, nail or clamp a batten or fence across the board where you want your dado to be cut. Score the sides of the dado by pulling the plane backwards along the fence with gentle pressure over the knickers. Plane the dado by starting at the far edge of the board and gradually working your way towards the near edge until you're making full-length strokes. Once the dado walls have been established to about 1/8 of an inch deep, you can remove the nailed or clamped on fence if it becomes an obstruction. Continue planing edge to edge until the depth stop contacts the face of the board and the plane stops cutting. It should take less than a minute to plane a dado in most common furniture woods.
So overall, I have to say that I am pretty impressed with this Stanley No. 39 3/4 inch dado plane. The dado that it made is really nice and clean. The walls are a little not so square, but they're both angling in the same direction. So that tells me that it was me not holding the plane plumb, not an issue with the plane itself. Like any other dado plane, when you tune one of these up, you may find that you're getting sort of a fuzzy edge on one side where you're getting some tearing and some chip out. It's probably going to be more evident in a softer wood like this white pine. If your dado's nice and clean in a piece of white pine, you know you've got the plane set up really well, so you shouldn't have to touch it. But if you're getting chipping or tearing along the edges, one of the edges, what that's telling you is that you need to make a lateral adjustment to the main iron. So if you're getting tearing along the left edge of the dado, you're going to need to take the main iron and shift it over to the right a little bit. Similarly, if you're getting tear out on the right edge, you're going to need to take that iron and shift it over to the left a little bit. Essentially what it means is that the iron is projecting a little bit beyond the nicker, and therefore it's scraping the side of the dado and tearing those wood fibers out outside of the scored line. So you need to make sure that your blade is definitely centered between the two nickers, or you're going to get that tearing along the edges. If you're getting tearing along both edges, it could mean one of two things. First, your main blade might be a little bit too wide for the plane. It might be wider than the knickers. It's highly unlikely that that's the problem with a metal plane like this. I have seen that be an issue with a wooden plane, wooden dado plane. I don't know if it was a manufacturing issue or what. It's not common, but it can happen from time to time. The simple solution is to grind down the side of the iron a little bit. The other thing that could be happening if you're getting tear out on both edges of the dado at the same time is that you might be rocking the plane in use. And what that's going to do is the side of the nicker or the plane itself might be scraping the side of the dado. So you might want to focus on holding it a little bit more vertically. In terms of holding onto this plane, I don't know why these get such a bad reputation. Yeah, it doesn't have a real nice front area like a wooden dado or a front knob to hold onto. But I found that my fingers kind of naturally found an area to sit in to force that plane against the fence. So it really wasn't too much of an issue. You can also just kind of hold it by the depth adjustment knob here. You really shouldn't be putting a lot of downward force on the plane here anyway. So it shouldn't be uncomfortable to hold because you shouldn't have to push down on the plane. If you're really having to bear down on the plane, you probably need to sharpen the knickers and or the iron. So I didn't see it as too big of an issue finding a way to hold it. Like I said, you can kind of grab it here. You can kind of put your fingers in here and push it up against the fence, sort of like you would do with a fenced plane. So to me, that was kind of a little bit overstated, the problem with holding a plane. Overall, I really did like it, and I certainly would not object to putting a few more of these in my own personal tool chest.